Okay, so sir, this is what I need you to do. I don't know if you can see me, you probably can't, and it's already 11, so we will need to start.
I can see you.
When you go to this part of the phone, you need to swipe down completely and you see a lot of icons.
Yeah.
A lot of icons. Can you see all of them? If you swipe down very, very slowly,
yes,
you should see a lot of icons. So now go to this, it should be in either those icons you see or the next one. You should see a do not disturb. It has a minus sign like this.
Okay. Okay. I've swiped down completely.
You can see a lot of icons, right?
Yes.
Okay,
NFC,
so
okay, location. Okay, let me
keep
keep
going. You
looking.
will find do not disturb. So, sir, we're going to start the webinar now. So I'm going to put you on mute and I will invite you to speak very soon. Thank you very much, sir. I'm sorry, DriveMe team, can I be given co-host privileges so that I can also moderate from this end? Thank you. I see we already have some attendants in the house. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give 5 minutes for other people to join in. We thank you again for spending your Saturday morning with us, and we will be starting very, very soon. Another 3 minutes actually for people to join, and we will kick off. Thank you. DriveMe team, please co-host privileges. Thank you very much. Thank you. I've gotten that. All right, it's 11:05 on the dot, so we're going to go ahead and kick off this webinar. I'd like to thank everyone again for being here. My name is Oluchi Okafor, and I will be moderating this event. And I'd like to say a very big thank you to our participants, and most especially to our panelists and our keynote speaker who have taken time out of their very, very busy schedules to be here. The theme of today's webinar is leveraging opportunities in the Nigerian transport and mobility sector. And that includes technology, logistics, finance, human capital, and the government sector as well. And we have a number of prominent individuals in the space who are going to be speaking to us today, both in terms of having conversations around the sector and also, trying to figure out way forward for us as a country and as professionals in the sector or aspiring professionals, because I know we're going to have a couple of people who are interested in becoming members of this very, very exclusive club of transport professionals in Nigeria. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker and also the conveners, just for your convenience, so that we all know who we're speaking to and who is talking to us as well, and why they have the singular honor of being chosen to be part of this very exclusive list. We have Mr. Fola Tinubu, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Primero Transport Services. He will be giving us a keynote speech very soon. I'd also like to introduce the convener of this, which is the CEO of DriveMe.ng, Damlola Odunlade Akeju. He's actually behind this entire thing and will be sharing his vision for us as to why he put this together and why we're here today. We also have Mr. Charles Matthews, who is the co-founder of HubRide. We have Mr. Sheyu Shiemi, who is the urban transport. We have Mr. Moshood Abolade, who's a senior investment officer of Africa 50, and Hio Shola Usigami, who is the co-founder of OnePort 365. I'd like to say a very big thank you to our panelists and our keynote speaker for being here today. Just so that we're keeping to time, we do not plan to keep you here beyond 12:30. So please hold us accountable. We're very, very big on that, because we do not take it lightly that you're spending your Saturday morning with us. So just to kick things off and to move this right ahead, I would like to invite Mr. Damlola Odunlade Akeju to give us his welcome speech and also tell us about DriveMe, who I hear has launched something really, really, really interesting and really groundbreaking in the transportation industry. And I'm sure we all want to hear about it. So Dami, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Oluchi. Good morning, everyone. I'm Damilola, as Oluchi mentioned, and I'm the founder and CEO at DriveMe. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all present here at this event today. This event was put together as a knowledge sharing session for players and aspiring players in the logistics and mobility sector. We have brought together a bunch of like very interesting panelists who have a lot of insights and are professionals with different backgrounds, but have keen interest in mobility and transportation sector in Nigeria. We hope that you derive value from this event, and we encourage you to please stay tuned, share the link with your friends and family, get your questions ready, and we hope that you have a good time learning this morning. Thank you so much, Oluchi, for introducing us.
Oh, of course. I would like to also ask you to take a few moments to talk about the new launch, which I know that this event is a series of events leading up to the launch, and also to further educate people about what DriveMe is about. So could you say a few words on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much. DriveMe is a service company, and what we do here at DriveMe is essentially our core is focused on driver management and driver education. Driver management, which is essentially the sourcing, the training, the sourcing, hiring, placement, pairing of drivers with both individuals and with corporate organizations. For driver education, we operate a driving school, which is focused on making sure that individuals and professional drivers are able to, learn the proper way how to drive. Educate them on the road signs and road signs, proper use of vehicles, and things like that. One of the products that we recently launched is our mobile platform, our web platform, where users are able to log in, register, and be able to hire a driver for a day, for a week, or an extended period. So we hope that some of the participants or attendees in this webinar are able to utilize some of our services, after you register on our platform.
That's absolutely amazing. Just one thing to add, you're doing driving school in a very different way. Our memory and our thoughts when you think driving school is some rickety manual vehicle that, barely starts, can't move, you have to kind of force it. But I know that you guys are creating a very comfortable environment for people to learn how to drive.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just feel like I needed to plug that in so that people who are thinking, oh, driving school, no, it's not the regular, I promise you. And you should definitely check them out. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dami. And now I think we're going to play a video about the new launch, just so that people can hear more from you and from the team as to how it works. So everybody enjoy.
Like Lagos can be hectic. Sometimes you wish you could just park your car and walk, but you don't have a driver, do you? We understand you don't need a driver every day of the week, and that's why we've created the DriveMe driver on-demand service. DriveMe is the platform that allows you book a driver for a day, a week, or an extended period, so you can focus on other things in the comfort of your own car while you move around the city. So how does DriveMe work? You log on to driveme.ng, you sign up, make a booking, and you will be contacted.
I'm a trader and I do sell home appliances, furniture, electronics, and sometimes vehicles. But when I'm not selling, when I have time out of my sales, I do attend to DriveMe customers who want on-demand drivers.
And there's more. On driveme.ng, you can process your driver's license, learn how to drive, process your car papers, buy insurance, and so much more. So log on to driveme.ng and enjoy the benefits.
All right. I think that pretty much, tells the story. Thank you very much, Dami, for that one. Again, we're just going to go straight into the moment of the day, which is our keynote speaker's address, Mr. Fola Tinubu. So I'd like to invite you, sir, to start to share your screen while I read an abridged version of his profile. I say abridged because it's a very long one. And if I read the entire thing, probably will be here for a very long time. So, but this should at least give you a picture of the personality who is going to be speaking to us today. I will go ahead to read his profile. Mr. Fola Tinubu is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Primero Transport Services Limited. Primero is emerging as a leading transportation and allied services provider in Africa under his leadership. It began operations in November 2015 with 434 buses plying several service routes in Lagos State. Primero's goal is to have a minimum 2,000 buses on Lagos roads daily, picking up 1 million people daily with its services extended to other major cities in Nigeria. Mr. Tinubu has a bachelor's degree in economics and politics from the University of East Anglia in Norwich, England. He also has an MBA from the University of Stirling in Scotland. He's worked in various financial organizations in the United States of America as a senior official prior to becoming the managing director and chief executive officer of Greater Washington Mortgage Limited Liability Company. He was the MD and CEO of that organization for 10 years before moving back to Nigeria to do his bit in national building. And he is also the managing director of Maryland Wreckage, where he partners with both foreign and indigenous companies on maritime projects. He's a strong believer in providing quality education for all, and he invests heavily in the company's corporate social responsibility. And as such, Primero offers renovations to debilitated facilities and buildings in various schools within Ikorodu. He also encourages graduates with relevant degrees in transportation to apply to his organizations. He also has established an internship program that permits undergraduates and graduates alike who have a keen interest in the transportation industry to learn and gain relevant experience. His hobbies are reading and playing golf, and he's happily married with kids. I'd like to welcome Mr. Fola Tinubu to go on to give us his keynote speech, and we're all very eager to learn and glean from your wisdom, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, could you please unmute? You're actually on mute at the moment, so just click on your microphone. Just click on your microphone. It's right in front of you. Okay, there we go. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'll try to keep this as short as possible because I know your time is everybody's time is very precious. Okay, here we go. Growth and sustainability in public transport sector. Okay, Nigerian public transport sector is a major contributor to the country's GDP. And getting the public transport system right will drastically change Africa's largest economy. Being the most populous country in Africa, the need for public transportation is huge, and the investment required is massive. The demand for public transportation can be clearly seen by the massive number of people waiting at different bus stops, especially all over Lagos. Statistics shows that people wait at bus stops for about 1 to 2 hours before they find transportation. The man-hour wasted waiting for public transportation all over Nigeria runs into trillions of naira. Over the years, Nigeria has witnessed a steady expansion of its public transportation network in form of road, railway, air, and inland waterways. But the growth of public transportation system lags behind the population growth. More recently, there has been enormous investment in the rail and road transport sector by both state and federal government, as can be seen by the Abuja-Kaduna rail line, Lagos-Ibadan rail line, Okokomaiko to Marina metro line, and the BRT network all over Lagos. The federal government and state government have also embarked on road constructions, i.e. the Lagos-Ibadan expressway that is almost finished now, Apapa or Shoki expressway that is being fixed, and all other road networks that both the federal and state government are working on. As of today, under the Lagos State Transportation Master Plan, there are 14 BRT corridors planned. 2 are presently operational now, the Ikorodu to TBS corridor and the Oshodi to Abule-Egba corridor. There's an urgent need to make the other BRT corridors operational to meet the teeming demand. A World Bank report estimates that Lagos requires about 7,000 buses operating daily and picking up passengers, but the total number of buses as of today falls below 2,000. So there's a massive gap between what is required and what is needed. What is required? The first one is public-private sector investment. The government needs to continue to invest massively in infrastructure, and the private sector should bring money to for the rolling stocks and rolling stocks like ferries, even maybe trains. There needs to be consistency in government policies. The inconsistency in government policies are what has led to the private sector reluctancy in investment in transportation area. And the government also needs to look into some sort of subsidy. I know in Nigeria, subsidy, it's anathema because it connotes graft. But if the government would not allow the private sector to charge the right price, and they do not want that because of the income, the low income level, then there have to be some sort of subsidy to make sure that the private operator makes a modicum of profits. The road traffic law enforcement, there need to be massive law enforcement, especially in Lagos, especially in Lagos, which is the heart of Nigeria. The lawlessness on our roads is just mind-boggling. And if we don't do something about it, I don't care how many roads we use all along. And earlier, that the government needs an infrastructure. We cannot build enough roads. We cannot build enough roads, but we can maintain the ones that we have and fix them so that the potholes and the what's it called, causing damages to cars and buses will be taken care of, and it will make traffic flow a lot faster and smoother. Financing. We need to work with, I don't care what the federal government or the state governments try to do. They do not have enough money to do all the investment that is required in public transportation. They need the private sector to invest. And the good news is that the PFAs and the PFAs are sitting on trillions and trillions and trillions of naira that can be diverted into this sector and can be diverted to bring the sector up to par. I've already spoken about the traffic and the accidents, and that we need to make sure we enforce our laws and minimize the traffic congestion. Vandalism and security. If you want the private sector to invest in public sector, we have to do something about security and vandalism, so that every time there's any riot or anything, any issue, they don't burn the buses, they don't burn the trains, they don't destroy the assets. And security. Sorry.
No problem, sir. I'm sure he wants to go sort out the source of.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, vandalism, they need to do something about vandalism and provide security, because without security, people will be reluctant in investing in this sector. Okay. At Primero, it's our duty to sustain this steady growth that we've embarked on, and we have taken up the responsibility by providing ultra-modern services to commuters in Lagos. By the end of the year, we plan to bring additional 200 to 300 buses to add to our fleet, to expand our fleet. We hope that by the end of this year, we have about 700 buses on our fleet. Standard training, we plan to open our own training facilities. We are working on training our workforce to make sure they are efficient. And like I said, we want to increase our work size because we are bringing in more buses. We are using the ITS. We are going to the next level of ITS to bring more technology to the deployment, to the maintenance, and to the control of the buses. We have a state-of-art maintenance plan. We are spending a lot of money to make sure we even get it better. And we are working with Lagos State government in going cashless, because we want everybody, hopefully by next month, to be using cards instead of paying cash on our to board our buses. And that card will be, you can use on all transportation modes in Lagos, both train, ferries, and buses. So it will work seamlessly on wherever you, whatever transportation mode you're using. And all the new buses that we are bringing are going to be using CNG. We are also planning to get rid of all our fossil fuel buses, probably in about 2-3 years time. All our buses will be CNG, because it's clean, it's cleaner, it's cheaper, and it's good for the environment. To achieve sustainable growth, public public-private partnership must remain a major driver. The government must engage in continuous dialogue with all stakeholders to accelerate and sustain this growth. Government at federal and state level should help the transport sector source for cheaper rates of funds. The investment required in this sector is huge. And until we get a single digit and long-term fund, it's going to be tough to grow this sector because you cannot borrow at about 25% for 2-3 years. Investment required in using gas. We are working with all the universities, including LASU, LAUTECH, UNILAG, to work with their transport schools. The transport school is a relatively new concept in Nigeria. And I think the first one is probably LASUT and the second one is LAUTECH. But quite a few universities are forming it now. We are working with them and we've promised all their first-class graduate, everybody with the first class that will, they have an automatic job in Primero. We want to develop the transport school so that when one of the biggest problems we have is capacity. We don't have people that have managed large fleets in Nigeria. And to get them, sometimes we have to go out of the country. But with the universities setting up all these various transport schools, we believe the future is very good for public transport. And we are encouraging more women to join, especially the driving part to become drivers, and also to join or to go to transport school and come into the space, because the space has capacity to generate so much jobs, and it can lead, to a big, massive growth in the economy and job growth. Because if you look at Primero, the total number of people working on that project is over 3,000. And if we can get the 14 or the other 12 BRT corridors operational, you can just multiply that and you can just see how many number of people that will be needed to be employed. As the government continues to implement policies that drive the transportation sector, we expect the current growth of the sector to be sustained with new private sector operators joining in the transportation space, which will lead to healthy competition amongst all stakeholders. What the Lagos State government has done is they've invited about 4 other private sector with capacity to join the BRT scheme. And right now, I believe 4 of us are operating different routes. And as these people come in with their financing, with their management, it augurs well for public transport space, because what we need is not people bringing 5 buses, 10 buses, or 1 ferry, but big institutions that have the capacity to bring in hundreds of buses that can use the economic of scale and use that to develop the space. We've all gone abroad. We see what is going on all over the world. And what happens is the investment that that has been poured into those spaces. And one of the panelists that's going to be talking, Mr. Sheyi Oshiyemi, works at Dubai, and he can tell you the amount of investment that has gone in. What we need to do is encourage Nigerian government to let us use some of the resources that the PFAs are sitting on to invest judiciously, wisely in this sector. The money that we need is there, and we can get a long-term money, but we need to give the private investors confidence that if they invest in this sector, not only will they get a modicum of profit, but there's security for their investment, and they will be allowed to charge proper fare. And if not allowed to charge proper fare, at least some sort of subsidy to make sure they make some money. Because you cannot ask people to invest billions of naira without any returns. Thank you very much. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really interesting and really power-packed in terms of the kind of information that we're accessing right now. I'd like to encourage all participants to please use the chat box for your questions and comments. I already see a couple of them, which I'm going to go ahead to share with you, sir, if you don't mind, so you can answer a couple of these questions. But before that, a couple of things that jumped out to me are, going cashless and going CNG. I think that is really important for the environment, and also with COVID as well, it's just easier to do cashless transactions. And somebody in the comment section is also saying, wow, that's a great development. I can't wait to have that card. I can't wait to have that card too, because, to public transportation. So that's very interesting. And then also what's involved, lack of female representation, which I understand. People, there's a mindset about driving or transport being a man's job, but I think we're starting to get away from that. Personally, most of my most memorable or amazing rides in any of the ride sharing apps have always been when I have a female rider. It's always very interesting to me. So I want a situation where that's no longer interesting. The fact that I get a female driver becomes the norm, as it were. And also talking about policies that will encourage private investors to invest heavily in the transportation sector and be assured that they will get their money back. These are very, very, very pertinent points. I have a question here from Emmanuel F. Young. He says, if the government meets its target of 7,000 buses, with the traffic situations in Lagos, our roads will become really congested. What is the government's plan on road expansion, considering the fact that our road infrastructures are already overwhelmed? Sir, could you give us some insight on that, please?
Actually, it's not the government that put that up. It's the World Bank. Okay. But the idea is to get people to put their cars at home and use public transport. The problem right now is if I have to wait an hour, couple of hours to get public transportation, then I'm going to drive my car. We cannot build enough roads, because the population growth is going so fast that I don't care how many roads we build, it will not be enough. So what we need to do is get to discourage people from using their cars, private cars, and get on public transport. And if we bring the buses, and that within 5 minutes to 10 minutes of me getting to the bus stop, I'm going to get into a clean, safe, and comfortable bus. Majority of people will leave their cars at home. And it will be mainly the buses that will be going up and down, and the traffic will be a lot better, and the stress on all of us will be much better instead of the way we are right now, that we sit in traffic. So it may be counterintuitive, saying that we need more buses, but bringing more buses actually will lead to the congestion of the roads.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir. Now the questions are pouring in. Wow. Okay. So we have another person who says, thanks for this. Regarding the deficit of 5,000 buses in Lagos, does that include the danfos and the yellow buses? And how do you plan to accommodate sharing that transportation space with the danfos in your plan?
Well, look, I don't work for Lagos State government, and I have to be what say here.
Yes.
I work for a private company called Primero Transport, but I know Lagos State government have a master plan, and the master plan is to push the danfos or the into the last mile so that the big BRT buses will be doing most of the running. But when you get to, let's say you're going from TBS to Ikorodu now, when you get to Ikorodu, you can now take danfo that will take you, the smaller buses that will take you to in front of your house or something like that. They are called the last mile. That's Lagos State government's plan.
Okay. So that explains it, I believe. Okay, so we have experience and experts you can without a proper town planning development plan, transportation and traffic will always be a problem.
That's an excellent question, and that's because if you don't plan it well, and I've been saying it, we need to move the jobs. What we have the problem we have in this country is that the jobs are concentrated in one place, and residents we moved the other opposite direction in the evening, and it leads to lots of congestion. We need to move some of the factories, out of where they are right now. Put them in Badagry, put them in Ikorodu, put them in Ekpe, put them so that it's closer to where people live, and not all of us have to get to Ikeja, Lagos Island, and Apapa that that we're all doing right now. But that's a governmental decision, and unfortunately, I don't work for Lagos State government, so.
Yeah, I agree that it really is about the flow of everybody going to one place and then coming out at the same time. It's really one of the things that leads to more and more traffic. Sir, do you think that a fleet of exotic cars can be used for a transportation business in Nigeria, considering the pricing of services, the repairs and maintenance of those cars?
I would not subscribe to that personally. I would not invest in that. I would invest in the buses because the numbers are, the sheer numbers of people that wants to use that are huge. There may be a segment of people that want luxury, but I don't think, there are that many because most of those people have their own cars, have their own drivers anyway. They don't, so me getting out of my car and getting, maybe a bit awkward. So I think what our attention should be right now is the masses. Once we solve that, then we can start talking about that part of it.
Okay, awesome. And the last question that I have here is, many of us study transport management technology and we now work in banks. Is there still any hope for us in the industry with the upcoming development in the transport industry? I'm just curious.
Definitely. And that's why we have gone to all these schools to work with them. We're working, even Lagos Business School, we're working with all of them, trying to encourage that if you read transport, don't go into banking, don't go into insurance, come into the transportation, space. And in the transport schools, it's not just about driving. There's warehousing, there's maintenance, there's financing, there's insurance. There's so many things you can get into. There's transport management. There's so many, facets of it that is mind-boggling that people don't see it. So my encouragement to people that read transport is, please don't go into insurance, don't go into banking, come into the transportation space that you studied. We need you and we are looking for you.
Thank you, sir. I've just seen one question in the chat box that I may have missed. How are you ensuring security of passengers on the buses? I'm guessing that is for your current fleet at Primero.
Actually, for the last 4 years, we've had little or no security issue for passengers inside the buses. You know, no issues at all. The security issues we've had that we've dealt with are when people are rioting or there's an accident with our buses or with commuters or something like that, and these miscreants come out. So the security challenges that we have is actually people destroying our buses, not people attacking our passengers. We've not had, in the last 4 years, any issue at all with security of the passengers.
Okay, awesome. I'm just going to take one last question, and it is, what type of training and development, including social welfare, is available for the drivers and personnel working at Primero?
Okay, with the drivers, we're paying a driver an average of about 90,000 a month. They have full health insurance. They have pensions. They also have health death insurance in case anything happens to them. So they are well covered on all aspects of packages that you get from any organization or any organization.
Okay, that seems very, very, very comprehensive. And yes, barring any other questions, I'd like to say a very, very massive thank you to you, sir, for doing so much justice to all those questions. They were just coming at you and you were just kind of, answering them all in a very smooth manner. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much for all that you do for the transport industry. I would like to ask that you please stay on for our panelist conversation, because I feel like a couple of the questions will definitely be right up your alley, if you don't mind and if you're not too busy.
No problem, I'll do that.
All right, thank you so much, sir. Okay, so we are going to, again, like I said, this is how we're just going to be kind of going this way, and we're going straight into the panelist discussion. I will be introducing the panelists. We already know who Mr. Polatinubu is, so I will skip his profile because I have read that already, and I will give very, very short introductions for our panelists. But I will like to unfortunately say that we were unable to connect with two of our panelists, Mr. Sheyi Oshiemi and Mr. Hio, who are unavoidably absent, Mr. Hio Shola Usidame, and they extend their apologies and they ask that you please go on without them. And I'm sure they will watch the recording and we can probably also access them for any other information that we might need. So the first panelist is obviously our convener, the person behind all of this, Mr. Damilola Odunlade Akeju, and he's the founder and chief executive of DriveMe.ng. He's a business professional with several years of experience in financial advisory, investment management, FMCG, and logistics. In 2017, decided to hire a personal driver for his family, but soon found out how daunting this task was, as well as the bottlenecks associated with verification and training. And that pretty much led to DriveMe. It's very interesting how the best startup stories always come from a place of inconvenience. I tried to do something I couldn't, so therefore I'm going to start a business about it. It's an ongoing theme, which I quite enjoy. I always like to quiz people of what made you start this, so I quite enjoy that. Welcome, Mr. Akeju. Thank you again for setting all of this up. We also have Mr. Charles Matthews, who is the co-founder for HubRide, founder actually. Okay, so Mr. Charles is an entrepreneur, logistician, and business strategist with a keen interest and passion to revolutionize daily commuting in growing cities in Africa. Prior to promoting HubRide, he has spent the last decade learning and helping businesses to optimize their assets and revamp internal business processes using data-driven intelligence, with records of operational excellence in the FMCG, mining and transportation or trucking industry. A few months after he co-founded and launched HubRide, he got accepted into the Forbes Digital Accelerator Program, Founders Institute, and was also featured on TechPoint Africa, Why Niger, Punch Newspaper, and Silverbird Television. I'd like to say a very big welcome to you, Mr. Charles. Are you there?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for joining us today, sir. We also have with us Mr. Motu Abolade. Mr. Moshood is a finance professional with over a decade experience in investment banking, venture finance, and infrastructure investing. His sectors of interest include energy, real estate, information technology, infrastructure, and government. He holds a bachelor's in real estate management from the University of Lagos and an MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. So those are our available panelists, and I'd like to start by welcoming them all, and then again, encouraging all attendees to use the Q&A section or the chat box to give any of their comments, questions, and then we'll take them afterwards. So first of all, let's start off with the just concluded keynote speech, which I'm sure we all listened to. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Moshood. Anything jump at you from there that you want to share?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed the insights that Mr. Tinubu provided for, in terms of the public transport space. But I think given Lagos and its vantage position in Nigeria, the main port is there. I think, it would also be good for the government to sort of look at and focus more on, other modes, like the railways, as well as the water transportation, because as road transport is not usually the most efficient. And, as he said, the role of the private sector cannot be overemphasized. I think there is a large pool of funding out there to sort of, develop the infrastructure for all these different modes, as well as the rolling stock, as Mr. Tinubu mentioned. The area where we suffer the most, I think, is the willingness of government to sort of drive policy direction, as well as, political will to sort of get all of these different aspects and segments of the transportation sector into fruition. And then, I think on the labor side of things, I think, one area where there's a lot of unemployment, but I think, one area that people can really and quickly tap into in terms of creating job opportunities is this sector. Actually, I like what the state government is doing with the Drivers Institute, but I think this also has to expand to all these other modes, as I've mentioned. And, we then might be on the right path to sort of solving, the transport problems, as well as creating jobs and opportunities for the citizens of the state.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moshood. Mr. Charles, any thoughts?
Okay, thank you very much. Just as Mr. Olatunji rightly said, there is over-reliance on road transportation. So if you look at statistics.
Sorry, Mr. Charles, we're having some sound issues. Are you using earphones? You might want to take them off because the audio is quite.
Wow.
Yeah, it seems like there's an interference. Okay. It's still wonky. Maybe we give you a few minutes to see if you can tweak that a bit, and then come back to you. Is that okay? I think there's an echo in the room. There's an echo in the room, and then there's also some kind of object interference. I'm not sure what it is, either a phone or furniture. So maybe you can move rooms, or you can try to use earphones if you're not already using that. Thank you. We'll come back to you when the sound is a lot better. Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions for Mr. Moshood, and then I'll move on to Mr. Damilola as well. So the first question I have from you is from a funding perspective, what will investors look out for to determine the viability of a logistics or transport business? So what if I want to invest, for instance, in say I have my own kind of money now, I'm looking for what to put it in, and I want to put in the transport business. What do I need to look out for so as not to enter one chance, essentially?
I think investors typically look at a lot of things, I would say, but I think to sort of bring it into a relatable fashion for whether you're a big investor or a small investor, whether you're considering investing in, the very small delivery business, or you're trying to invest in, BRTs like Mr. Tinubu does. I think there are two major things that I think every investor would look at. One is long-term profitability of the venture that you're considering. And, what does that mean, right? Everybody knows what profit means, when your costs, when your revenues exceed your costs. But when you look at it in the long term, I mean, this is transport, right? You're not trying to, arbitrage and do business for 6 months. You are looking at, a business that is sustainable and can last, right? So, when we say long-term profitability, what we do, what I mean is, your revenues, your unit revenues must exceed your unit costs. And it sounds very basic, but, on the revenue side, it's very easy. The money you receive from your customer is your revenues, right? But when you then start to look at costs, I think where a lot of businesses will struggle is that, say, for example, I'm into the business of, say, delivering packages, right? And I'm charging a particular amount. I know how much I would receive. But people tend to lose sight of their costs. They will say, oh, I pay my driver X amount, I buy fuel. But they always forget that bike that you're using would only last for 2 years. That's if you maintain it well. And they also lose sight of the fact that, further down the line, every 3 months or every 6 months, there are some expenditure that I have to incur. So you need to look at your overall life cycle cost and tell yourself, how much of this cost is attributable to this particular delivery. So sometimes, every time it will be more than your cost of fuel and your cost of the driver. So people have to look at that. So you need to look at the overall, life cycle cost of, each revenue unit or each product, right? So that is how we tend to look at long-term profitability. Another thing that I would say is very important is capital efficiency, which essentially is, businesses investors would typically like to put their money in businesses where people are using the capital that they give them very well. And what does this mean, right? If you consider two businesses that are doing the same thing, the same exact thing, they get the same amount of revenues and they have the same costs, right? You tend to compare these two and say, oh, they're the same. But if one business is spending, 100,000 naira buying bikes and the other is spending 80,000, obviously it's clear who I want to invest in, right? Because the other guy is spending money well, right? So what does this point? It points to, instances where you see people doing business, they are making a lot of profit, they're doing very well, but they spend money on things that they don't need, right? A lot of people, what we do is a lot of people spend money, too much money on marketing, spend too much money on building very fancy offices, right? So these are things that, investors always look out for. You might be doing very well in the market, you might be the number one player, but, how are you spending money? Because, as they always say, human beings are the worst managers of money. Right? So, all those office hangouts and all of those things, even though they are very nice to have, but, these are areas where investors will look at and say, when I'm trying to compare businesses that are doing the same thing, but, I need to pick. So these are areas where investors look at. So I would also say, aside the two things that I've mentioned, generally, investors will look at, the market where you are playing, how big is it, but versus how attractive is it. So big is like size, how many potential customers are out there, and attractiveness has to do with profitability. How profitable is this business? So if you sort of draw a matrix and say, if the size is not so big, then it has to be very, very attractive and very profitable for me to go into that niche. So investors would typically, investors typically want to put $1 in and get more than that when they want to exit. So you need to be sure that, you are in the right market. And then how are you positioning your product to take advantage of these opportunities, right? Are you better than the others? Are you worse than them? Are you trying to catch up? And then finally, I would say, the team behind the business, and when you say team, people tend to look at the founding team alone, right? In a business, vision is one thing, but the truth is that vision can be attributed to one person, but execution is everybody's business. So people that are executing for you, how aligned are their interests with the interests of you, the founder, and also the investors? Are they going to leave tomorrow because you increase their salary and they can go and negotiate better elsewhere? So, I would say, there is a long list, but for the purpose of this conversation, I think I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions from the audience. Thank you very much.
I can already see a couple of them, but I'm going to get to them. I just want to check in with Mr. Charles. Thank you so much, Mr. Mushu. That was fantastic. I definitely learned a lot. Mr. Charles, how's your audio now? Can you say something for us?
Yeah. Can you hear me like this?
It's better. It's still wonky, but I think we'll just go ahead and maybe I can ask you a question. Maybe I can ask you a question and we can hope for the best. So one of the questions that I have for you is, how prepared is Nigeria with regards to the future of trans tech, and what are the opportunities that exist? Because you are the co-founder of HubRide, which is in the transportation space from a tech angle. I'd also like to advise that maybe you can move your phone away from your system. I think that might help. One of the...
I don't have my system here.
Okay, so you're using your phone.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So no problem. So how prepared is Nigeria for the future of trans tech, and what are the opportunities that exist? And this is also obviously coming from you as a tech startup founder. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much once again. The level of preparedness can be ascertained by examining the current state of the transportation system in Nigeria. So when we talk about the transportation system, we are referring to a system of moving persons or goods consisting of 3 components. I'm hearing an echo. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello?
We can hear you. The interference still exists, but we can hear you a bit better than the last time. So let's go with this.
Okay. Thank you. So basically, innovations in transportation technology are essentially born out of 3 necessities, which is efficiency, ease, and safety. In Nigeria currently, it's not structured. There are a lot of opportunities. So, and that can be felt when you assess the transportation system. So, like I rightly said, you look at 3 components. You look at the vehicle, what are the cars, the buses, the rail cars, the airplanes, cable cars, ships that are available. Look at the guideway. What's the condition of the road, the bridges, the railways, port, airport, seaport? What's the condition? So you also look at the operations and control systems, timetables, operational procedures, and goal assignment. So when you examine all these stuff, you should be able to come to a conclusion whether Nigeria is ready or whether we still have a lot of work to do. So when you place this aside, we've been hearing about the future of transport, but the future is here right now. Wow, somebody is saying audio is terrible.
Yeah, we're just gonna try. Don't worry, keep talking. I'll probably do a summary afterwards. So please, it's fine. Don't worry. Go ahead. Yes.
I'm not really pleased with this. The audience should have to manage this. As I was saying, we've always talked about the future of transport, but that future is here already. Somehow we've heard of the autonomous vehicles, we've heard of hyperloop, flying taxis, underground tunneling, and convertible car. So when we look at all these happening in advanced, say, developing and developed countries, and we'll compare with what we have currently, then we'll see that there is a huge gap. And that gap is perceived as a result of the structure of the system right now, which needs to be fixed.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna just give a brief summary. So it's essentially saying that the need for transportation technology came from 3 things: efficiency, ease, and safety. So yeah. I think that is pretty much the summary of it. If we're no longer, if it's not a future thing again, it's kind of like, you know how 2020 and everything that has happened after kind of made us get to the future a lot faster than we planned. I think that's pretty much in line with what you're saying. So it's no longer a futuristic thing. It's more like it's here and everybody needs to kind of buckle up and get
it already.
Yes, it is. I completely agree with that. Thank you so much, Mr. Charles. I'm going to go on to our convener, Mr. Damilola. Why drivers? Why are they so important to the value chain for transportation, logistics, and the rest? Why is that something that, you know, you decided to build an entire startup out of? It's obviously important, but, you know, why is that something that you felt needed that much attention?
Thanks, Ology. Excuse me. So why drivers? currently, even around the world, yes, we're getting driverless cars from Tesla and some of the other driverless technology, and driverless car manufacturers. But currently, the adoption is not as high as you would expect. If a company buys 50 trucks, 100 buses, and all those other assets, these assets will definitely not move themselves. And the drivers need to move the goods or the people or whatever it is that they are moving from point to point. The drivers need to man those vehicles and move the assets from point to point. In Nigeria, there are over 11 million vehicles, and 6 million of those vehicles are in Lagos alone. Over 6 million of those vehicles are in Lagos alone. 70 to 80% of goods are transported by road networks. So it just shows you how much investment is going into transportation, which is road transportation, and the drivers that are the ones manning those assets. And there are typically different types of drivers. There's the driver that is the professional driver who is driving for work, and there's also the driver that is driving for his daily commute. Excuse me. So there's the driver that is driving for his daily commute. So as Mr. Tinubu said, drivers' welfare is very critical. People, generally the drivers are not as appreciated as they should be, because they just assume that the assets are more important than the drivers. So we're trying to change that narrative as a company to say, hey, these drivers are they're like the plug in your entire logistics value chain, because no matter how much you load your goods on those vehicles, and you do all your safety checks and do everything, those vehicles will sit down there if you don't have a driver, right? If a driver decides to park a vehicle somewhere, it will delay the turnaround time from say factory to market. So the driver welfare, even finding the right drivers can be tough. So those are the bottlenecks that we're plugging. And through several collaborations and partnerships, we're able to source drivers, and training cannot be on. Oh, let me not go there. Yeah. So we are able to source drivers. We're able to ensure that we get them up to speed on professionalism, etiquette, and all of those type of things. And the driver also, mainly we know that the driver is also responsible for the assets and the safety of the goods or the people that are in their custody. So an irresponsible driver can cause damage to a vehicle. So those are the things that we take into consideration, and that is why we've said, okay, you know what? If there are over 11 million vehicles in Nigeria that are plowing our roads daily, then there are pretty much over 11 million drivers out there as well. And we're looking beyond just the Nigerian space. We're looking at all so many other parts of Africa, and there are drivers everywhere. So our core business is to ensure that we're able to source the right drivers and place them with the right company or individual, as the case may be.
Thank you so much, Dami. I have a question for our keynote speaker, Mr. Tinubu. I know you're still with us, and there's a question in the comment section, and the question actually also is very related to what I had to ask you. So the person is asking that as private sector individuals, how involved are like everybody here who handles the transport business, like Primero, DriveMe, HubRide, in policy molding and enabling conversations with the Ministry of Transport? Now, that's her question, but my question was actually, like, can private stakeholders actually be a part of government policy formulation? And how can they protect themselves against unfriendly government policies? I mean, we saw what happened, was it last year? I'm sorry, time has taken a new form in my head. I don't even remember if it was last year that Gokada was banned. I can't remember. The Isha was banned. So, those kind of policies that can come up and take you by surprise. How do entrepreneurs such as the ones we have here on the panel and yourself protect themselves? And can you actually be a part of formulation of government policy in this country?
The answer is yes. We can be part of it, and we are part of it, because we are, somebody like me, I'm constantly talking to people at the House of Assembly, and the Lagos State government is good that when they want to pass a law, they invite opinions from people like us, and we tell them what we feel. And of course, there's also the back channel that we use. We meet the commissioners and the civil servants at forums, and we pull them aside, we speak to them and all that kind of stuff. But they can do better. They can do better. And I've been advocating actually that there should be an honest discussion on pricing, that let the operators sit, let the government sit, let the committers also, representatives sit, so that we can come up with a good pricing. Because if we don't get the pricing right, the private sector will not invest. And because it's a pricing that will ensure what the gentleman was talking about profitability and all that kind of stuff. If the pricing is strong, they will not invest. So we need to get it right. Yes, we can, and we do influence, because we talk to people in the House of Assembly, we talk to the civil servants, we talk to the commissioners, and the present governor is a very listening governor. He's very approachable. We've approached him a couple of times on our issues. We've had meetings with him, and he's been gracious enough to listen and accede to some of our requests.
Okay, so what about protecting yourself from unfriendly policies, government policies that might come up?
It's the same thing. You just have to keep on working at it. And I'll give you an example. The federal government just reduced the tariff on imported buses and cars and all that kind of stuff. So many people have invested in assembly plants in Nigeria. They've invested billions of nairas. And all of a sudden, the government came and reduced the tariff from 35% to 5% or 10% or something like that, and put them at a competitive disadvantage. In fact, we were going to invest in our bus assembly plant in Lagos, but we stopped it now because we don't think it's profitable anymore. But the best way to do it is to actually have a trade, a business forum where all to listen to us if we come collectively than instead of just one of us talking.
Thank you so much, sir. That definitely helps a lot to answer that question. I have a participant question for Mr. Mushood. Knowing that the assets in this industry have very high depreciating factors, what is the average cycle time before expectation of profits in this sector, being such a huge asset sector? So essentially, what is the conceivable amount of time that one can say, okay, we will be able to return profits at this point in time, especially because it's very asset heavy? So what are your thoughts on this?
I think this goes back to pricing, right? Because at the end of the day, for every business to be sustainable, you need to price your products or your offerings at a point where you're able to replace your assets and turn in a profit for your capital providers. So in terms of timing, this will vary. It will depend on, what assets have you decided to purchase. There are some assets that are cheaper to buy and more expensive to maintain. So you need to strike a balance with that. So I would say there are also, innovative ways of financing, short-lived assets like that. So leasing is one way where people, typically would look out to in developed markets, rather than tying down your capital and also extending out your payback period. That is something you could embrace, and that would help you shorten that. Because at the end of the day, if you are a logistics business, what you're doing is rendering a service. And typically, global practice today is you focus on what you are best at, and in terms of managing the assets that move things from point A to B. If it's not your core, if there are people that can do it out there cheaper than you can, you are better off going to them and, seeking out their services. So, it's a very tricky question, but the truth is your actual context or your situation would determine, what you have to do. How much money do you have? you know, how much time, how patient is your capital as well, and what are the market dynamics? Because there are times when you just can't price too much because of competition. Then you need to look out for, you know, approaches that would help you survive. So leasing is, you know, is one area that you can always look out to ensure that you are matching your outgoings, which is your leasing cost. You are matching that with your revenue, making them, you know, current items in terms of, you know, I'm paying a monthly lease and I'm earning revenues on a monthly basis rather than spending the whole amount buying and tying down your capital, buying, you know, a capital intensive asset that would repay you over a longer period.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moshood. Mr. Charles, I'm going to come back to you briefly. I'd like you to maybe in very few words, your advice for any future founder or co-founder of a trans tech company in terms of maybe just three most important things that you think they should bear in mind.
Okay. It's been an interesting journey. To start with, let me say that opera technology company, we don't own assets. So we create a platform for others to onboard their assets. So our high level concept is to offer for both. So this market is how would I put it? Like a complicated one. Because you go into the market because you feel that people are tech savvy, they are going to like products, and you get into the market with price. The first book on this product market, we would position the 5 horses. That's 5 houses after we had done a lot of marketing and everything, spend a lot of billions. So at the price, nobody came to use the brand. So we had to return.
Okay, Mr. Charles, this is what we're going to do. Sorry to cut you. I think we should do this because these people are very interested in this answer. Let's use the chat, please. Could you just type out the points in the chat so that everybody else can see? Because I am having a challenge even hearing you to be able to, you know, translate. So, and it seems like this is a very important question for some of our participants. So I would like to employ you to please use the chat button to give your advice to aspiring trans tech startup founders who might be interested so that they don't miss out on your extensive knowledge. Thank you very much. So while Mr. Charles is answering those questions, I'm going to go back to Mr. Moshood for one more question. And then I would like to encourage participants to please start leaving their questions now because we will be rounding this up in a couple of minutes and I don't want you to miss out on asking any of your questions. Okay, I think I see someone with 3 questions actually. So I'm going to read out the questions and then we're just going to channel it to whoever I think is in the best position to answer them. The first one, the question is based on, said in all your states, NURTW, which is the National Union of Road Transport Workers, has been scrapped. So the first question is, do you think the same action can be emulated in Lagos State? I think that's a question that I might like to throw to our keynote speaker because he seems more knowledgeable about the government side of things, even though you don't work for the Lagos State government. Yes, I know, but I'm going to throw it to you regardless. The second thing is, what exactly is the role of the union in our transport system? And going forward, do you think the union is helping in the organization of the system as we've been making efforts in selling a sane public transport system? Okay, so sir, over to you as our resident government specialist.
I know your state has banned NURTW, but there's something Lagos State has done, which most people don't realize. They've allowed the NURTW and RayTran to form a company called Amalgamated. And with that, they are allowing them to come into the BRT space. But they are not doing it under the Agbero scheme that they've been used to before. They have made commitment to Lagos State also to bring XYZ number of buses. They are going to abide with the same rules and guidelines that we are abiding by. Look, whether we like it or not, they're Nigerians also. And we may not like everything that they do, but they also have rights, that needs to be protected. And we cannot just work on people's rights willy-nilly, because eventually it comes back to haunt all of us. So what Lagos State has done is actually ask them to form a formal company called Amalgamated, and hopefully that will curb some of the excesses of the union that we all know. But I don't know, banning is a military era idea, and because if you ban, they'll take it, they can take it to court that you're infringing their fundamental human rights. And I personally think they probably will win, because the Constitution allows for freedom of union, that you can form a union. So, but the government just needs to regulate and make sure that they act within the laws.
Thank you so much. I knew that you could do justice to that question, so I wasn't wrong to channel it to you. So I'm going to take just one more question while we wait for Mr. Charles to finish. I'm going to do one more question from my list for Mr. Moshood, and it's regarding funding again, because this is an ongoing issue for anybody who wants to do transportation business, and we have a couple of them here from the kind of questions that we've been receiving. How do I determine the right kind of funding for my business, equity or debt? How do I decide which one is going to be more appropriate for the kind of business that I do? It's kind of like Mr. Charles said, from what I was able to gather from what he said, HubRide is not asset owning. It's more like you have the asset, use it on my platform. So for those kind of different businesses, what would be the things to look out for, really briefly, what to look out for in terms of whether to do equity or debt? You're on mute, sir.
So in addition to equity and debt, I think I've mentioned leasing as a way to fund. And then there are also like quasi-equity structures as well that combine both the features of equity and debt. But I would say that, to just aid people's understanding, equity is more permanent, is more patient capital. It's appropriate for funding very high risk or very, very long-term assets, given that, and also when you're in the early stages of your business in terms of your evolution, because it doesn't make sense to sort of use equity, when you're just starting out. You need, so the equity is like it's like the bread under your pizza, right? You sort of need that base, right? And then for debt, there's long-term debt, there's short-term debt. The advice here is debt is very risky for the owners of the business. Is less risky because the way the way it works is, somebody has to take it. So when you do debt financing, essentially, if what you're going to fund has, X amount of risk, the owners of the business are taking more than the debt providers. So you need to be very sure that, I'm using debt to fund assets that actually match the tenor of the debt. So if you want to fund, don't take 7-year loans to fund, a bike or a bus that is going to last for less than that, right? And then quasi-equity, when the risk, when the perception of risk is not that clear to the owners of the business or the business owners, and the debt providers, what you want to do is you want to add sweetness to your instrument, which is why there is something called quasi equity. It is typically appropriate where there is that lack of alignment, right? We both cannot agree that this business is very good. I think it's not. So I would give you debt, but if it turns out being good, then my debt will change to equity, something like that, right? I mean, having mentioned all of these sources, it's also important to understand that you can use a mix of all of these, to fund one particular asset, depending on the size, right? But in terms of, what you need to bear in mind, because there is no hard and fast rule here, right? You need to look at what stage are you in your life cycle as a business, right? And the asset that you're trying to fund, what is the useful life? Then also like what existing financing obligations do you have? Because there are times that you sign agreements, you raise the money, you don't go back to read it, but then it's sort of, it precludes you from raising further financing, at certain terms. So you need to consider all of that. And then also financial market conditions would be another thing you need to look at. So if the interest rate environment is low, right, you know, even though it is a typical equity type financing, it will be good for you to take advantage of that, you know, low interest rate environment and raise debt. But in the interest of time, you know, I'm happy to sort of take questions that people have specifically. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to share any means of reaching you on the chat box? Maybe like an email address or something? I don't know if that's something you're comfortable with, because I know a lot of people will have questions. All right, thank you so much. So we have one that was supposed to be my last question, but there's a last question, so it's going to go to you, Mr. Damilola, and it's about: is there any action currently being taken? Because I don't want to send all the questions about NURTW or Agberos to Mr. Tinubu, because I think we all know, we all experience them. So let's all share in the answering of the question. So that means you are in transport space, so you have drivers and you know that this is an issue. So is there any action currently being taken to curb the pressures or excesses of the area boys on transport operations? Because it seems like they keep growing stronger than ever. So what's your take on that, Dami?
Well, in the last couple of weeks, so one thing I noticed on the road is that the Agberos are wearing their uniforms more, right? The white and green uniform. And there was a meeting recently, I think it was late last year, where the government called stakeholders, especially in the road union, like the NURTW, where the government called them and other stakeholders together to engage them, especially with the menace of the downfall drivers parking on the road and picking people up. So they engaged the NURTW and mandated them to ensure that, you know, they help with the reduction of traffic. So in the last couple of weeks, I've noticed that as much as they are wearing their uniforms, at least in my area, I've noticed that, you know, they are also assisting with traffic flow. So where you see the downfalls parking on the road, you see that they are the ones, you know, harassing the downfall guys to move from there and make sure that, you know, traffic is flowing easier. So I don't know if there's any immediate action that can be taken to curb their excesses, because what really are their excesses? Collecting tolls from, or money from downfall drivers. Well, the money that they're collecting is, you know, adding value to the government. So they cannot, I don't think it is ideal to totally eliminate them, but more or less maybe regulate them a little bit stricter. So that's my opinion, and yeah.
All right, thank you very, very, very much. I'd like to encourage the panelists to please share their social media handles of their businesses and individual social media handles for more nuggets and all your thoughts regarding this, because I'm sure that our participants would like to engage with you further after this session, which we are going to be calling to a close now. So just to end it, I'd like to also state that the program that you just watched is proudly sponsored by DriveMe.ng, obviously, who are the conveners, and also by Premier Transport Services, HubRide as well, and the organization that I work for, which is Multimix Academy, Nigeria's premier logistics and supply chain training institute as well. So I just thought I had to plug myself a little bit. So yes, we would like to call this session to a close. And in doing that, obviously, I would like to thank everyone for being here, but I think that the thanks would sound a lot sweeter coming from the mouth of the guy who put it together. Please refer to the chat box for Mr. Charles's answer for the founders of tech startups. I think the answer is very insightful. I think you'll definitely find a lot of wisdom there. And I'm sure he will be sharing his social media handles so that everyone can also participate. Again, use the chat box to send your appreciation, say something that you know, came to you, like some kind of rema that you might have received from here. I want to believe that everyone will get a copy of the recording to be able to share with family and friends that couldn't be here today. So I'd like to hand over to Damilola to give his vote of thanks and to, you know, share any other information that he might have with us. So over to you, Mr. Akeju.
Thank you, Oluchi. Another big thank you to all attendees on this webinar. You know, you made our day with all the questions. To our amazing panelists, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Tinubu, Mr. Moshood, Mr. Charles, for your time and all the inputs that you had. in putting this together. I would also like to say a very big thank you to Oluchi of Multimix Academy. She's done amazingly well, keeping us in check and putting us in line with moderating this event. And my team at DriveMe, thank you all so much for constantly immersing yourself in the work that we do here. I wish everyone a successful year. Have a nice day and look out for the second edition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So on that note, I'd like to also thank the panelists for engaging conversations. I was not a participant, but I was, because I learned so much from you all. I'd like to thank you all, Mr. Palatinubu, Mr. Mushuda Baladia, Mr. Charles Matthews. Thank you so much for your time, for your knowledge, and for sharing that knowledge, because it's one thing to have the knowledge, another thing to actually be able to give it out, and give it out like this, in such an open and honest manner. We really do appreciate it. I'd like to obviously thank the DriveMe team, just like you've done. And I'd like to thank all the participants for being so engaging. Your questions were insightful. They actually brought out the knowledge that was needed. And I'd like to say a very big thank you. Online programs can be very tricky, but this is our new normal. We've carried the new normal from 2020 to 2021. And but I think it's getting better. I think that we're adjusting to this method of learning and this method of engaging, and it can only get better from here. And on that note, I'd like to call this webinar to a close. Thanking everyone for joining and wishing you all a fantastic weekend and a fantastic week ahead. Thank you, everyone. And that's it.
Thank you.
I think we can yell cut on this one now. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.